Diddy. In recent years, this R&B and hip-hop icon has faced a storm of allegations and controversies which culminated in a dramatic arrest in 2024. But anyone that's followed Diddy closely will know that this is nothing new. His whole career has been plagued by questionable moments since he found fame in the 90s. From being a street hustler to becoming a billionaire business mogul, Diddy has personified what it means to live the American dream. But behind his career, there's been endless allegations on the dark activities he was allegedly indulging in behind the scenes, including and racketeering, charges that would lead to a downward spiral of the once powerful industry titan. His attorney would call it an unjust prosecution, as countless lawsuits would ensue, tainting the image of the once respected and globally renowned voice of his generation. In November 2023, his ex, Cassie Ventura, filed a lawsuit claiming assault and abuse, even alleging that Diddy had forced her to engage with male while he watched. This all-encompassing lawsuit revealed some of the sordid details about Diddy's private life to the public for the first time ever. Though he's never been convicted of crimes yet, Diddy's history is riddled with violent allegations from various victims, exes, and industry figures. Diddy's attorney vehemently denies Cassie's claims, framing her lawsuit as an attempt to blackmail over $30 million from him. And while the ex-couple reached a settlement in November last year, the wave of lawsuits didn't stop. It was only the beginning of a stream of suits and cases that continues to this day with no end in sight. As we explore Diddy's timeline of controversies, one thing is clear: his legacy will be forever altered and tainted by the drama, no matter what the jury decides. But finding himself in court is nothing new to the diddler. In fact, ever since his career started in the 90s, he's been in and out of court constantly, in a revolving door of allegations which he impeccably has managed to dodge and finesse his way out of for over 3 decades. Perhaps this case in 2024 will be the one that seals Diddy's fate and takes him off the streets for good. But in this video, we'll be exploring the dozens of times that Diddy has found himself in court to build up a picture of how this bulletproof bad boy inexplicably has managed to dodge justice time and time again in over 20 court cases, and how he shamelessly bragged about using his finances to pervert the course of justice at the expense of his accusers. But before we get to the endless court battles, to understand Diddy's journey truly, we need to go back to where it all began, exploring his early childhood and the challenges that shaped him, as well as the pivotal events that set him on a path towards fame and controversy, including the very first lawsuits that would ultimately come to define the rest of his life. Sean John Combs was born in 1969 and spent much of his early childhood in the gritty streets of 1970s Harlem, New York, a backdrop that he described vividly in a throwback interview with Vlad TV.
I'm a Harlem boy, no disrespect to anybody. That's where my mom was from, that's where my father's from, that's where my father died at, that's where I was born, that's what I represent, that's my swag. That's my tenacity. I just love being from there. That's where my soul comes from. That hustler mentality has a lot to do with why I am who I am and why I am where I'm at today.
Diddy's mother, Janice Combs, juggled work as a model and a teacher to support her family, displaying a dedication and strength that Diddy would often reference as influential in his own life. His father, Melvin Earl Combs, had a dual life. While he worked for the New York City Board of Education and drove a taxi, apparently he also had ties to the New York underworld, notably working with the infamous drug dealer Frank Lucas. In an interview with Vlad TV, Lucas himself touched on his connection to Melvin, painting a complex picture of the man who would ultimately shape much of Diddy's early worldview.
Me and Melvin Combs were good friends. We were good friends. We did a lot of business together. Of course, it was not a legal business, but we did a lot of business together.
And I know Melvin used to come to your club, the turntable, a lot.
Yes, he did. He come there all the time. Melvin was like a lady man.
In January 1972, tragedy struck when Melvin was shot and killed while sitting in his car on Central Park West during an alleged drug deal gone bad. According to detectives who had been involved in investigating Melvin's drug operation, he was known to drive around with large quantities of dope and also allegedly had $30,000 worth of cash on him the day he was killed. And while neither the drugs or cash were ever found on him when his body was discovered, it would later come out that he allegedly had owed $80,000 to what the newspaper described as the mafia, although this likely referred to Frank Lucas's operation and not the Italian-American Cosa Nostra. Moreover, earlier in January, Combs had allegedly been arrested in his home in Yonkers, where the police would discover $75,000 worth of cocaine and $10,000 in cash, along with a stolen revolver. All these factors giving possible motives for people to take him out, but nevertheless, even after his death, a wiretap on Melvin's phone, which had also led to his arrest shortly before his murder, would ultimately take down a large drug operation worth millions. Initially, Diddy was told that his father died in a car accident, but later on, as he grew older, he sensed gaps in this story. Digging through newspaper archives, he would learn the truth that his father's death was actually connected to the drug trade. And in a video uploaded on Diddy's Revolt TV channel on YouTube, he would share how this early loss of his father had profoundly impacted him, driving him to succeed and escape the cycle of violence that claimed his father's life.
My father was a hustler, you know. He was a drug dealer, he was a hustler. And so I learned early in life there's only two ways out of that, dead in jail.
At the time, though the murder left 3-year-old Diddy and his sister Keisha to be raised solely by women, his mother, who would work 3 jobs to provide for the family, and his grandmother, who would take the charge in looking after the children as the family would move to her apartment in the Esplanade Gardens, a large co-op housing complex opened only 5 years earlier right on the shore of the Harlem River, which at the time was hailed as an opportunity for middle-class black New Yorkers to build wealth, but has since become another example of New York's failed affordable housing initiatives. But about 9 years after the tragic loss of his father Melvin, in 1981, Diddy and his family moved to the quieter suburbs of Mount Vernon in New York. This inner suburb, located just north of the Bronx, presented a stark contrast to the gritty environment of 80s Harlem. Mount Vernon would be a new start for his family, and Diddy would describe it as a place that broadened his horizons and exposed him to new cultures and possibilities, fostering his early ambitions. In Mount Vernon, Diddy attended Mount St. Michael Academy, an all-boys private school with a focus on discipline and academics. It was here that he developed an interest in performance arts, foreshadowing his future in the entertainment world. By his teenage years, he was already making appearances as a dancer in music videos, even performing for icons like Diana Ross, which would foreshadow the flamboyant flair that he would bring to his own music videos later on. Diddy was also athletic and would run track and play in the high school's football team, even reportedly dreaming of making it to the NFL one day, until he would unfortunately break his leg, which forced him to reconsider his career choice. After high school, Diddy pursued a business degree in Howard University in Washington, D.C., and it was during his college years that his knack for organizing events and promoting himself truly emerged. Known for throwing massive parties, Diddy quickly gained a reputation on campus. These events were monumental, drawing hundreds and later thousands of attendees, including celebrities. One of Diddy's most memorable events, according to a close friend, DJ Derek Angeletti, took place at the Masonic Temple and attracted over 4,500 people. His charisma and business-minded approach made him immensely popular, and he used his newfound connections to spread his name, even distributing business cards engraved with puff, a nickname that he had allegedly gotten during his high school years while playing football, often puffing out his chest to make himself look bigger. Although on other occasions, he's reportedly claimed that he got the nickname from when he was a child, often huffing and puffing as a kid when he got angry. Now, these different versions of the story kind of raise a question as to whether any of them are actually true, or simply just different stories that he's told the media over the years. And as you'll learn over the course of this story, you really can't trust anything Diddy says. But it was in 1989, during his freshman year, that he reconnected with his childhood friend, rapper Dwight Myers, better known as Heavy D. Heavy D, a seasoned figure in hip-hop, had recently signed to Uptown Records in New York, and over the summer of 1989, he introduced Diddy to Uptown's founder, a flamboyant music executive named Andre Harrell. Impressed by Diddy's energy and potential, Harrell offered him an internship at Uptown Records. While still a freshman in college, Diddy began working at Uptown, quickly making a mark with his relentless work ethic and eye for talent, and in no time, he was promoted to an A&R executive, responsible for discovering and nurturing new talent. By the age of 20, Diddy was already finding extraordinary success in the music industry, reportedly playing a pivotal role in developing the R&B quartet Jodeci, changing their clothing style from the glitchy glamour of 80s pop to the gritty world of hip-hop, leading the release of their 1991 hit album Forever My Lady, which would end up selling over 8 million copies worldwide. Diddy's career trajectory had been nothing short of amazing, rising from intern to A&R with a chart-topping record under his belt in just a few years' time. But just as quickly as he would gain access to the music industry, he would also begin to face controversies. His first one, in fact, being such a major tragedy that it could have, and perhaps should have, ended his career before it truly even started. In November 1991, the basketball legend Magic Johnson would shock the sporting world by announcing that he was retiring from the NBA due to having tested positive for AIDS. Following this shock announcement, Diddy would reportedly get an idea to organize a charity event to raise money for the fight against the virus, which was becoming a major epidemic in the US during the early 90s. Diddy would ask a good friend, Heavy D, real name Dwight Myers, to participate in the event, which would be a celebrity basketball game and a concert that would include names like Boyz II Men, Run DMC, and Big Daddy Kane, all major names in New York's bustling rap scene at the time. The event would be held in the gymnasium of the City College of New York, located in Harlem, which at the time had a capacity for about 2,700 people. For the event, Diddy would authorize the printing of 2,000 tickets to be sold in advance, which according to the flyer for the event could be purchased at 2 locations: a clothing store called Boss Emporium, which was owned by infamous Harlem drug kingpin Kevin Childs, and the famous Apollo Theater in the heart of Harlem. Now, the first problem would arise from the fact that Diddy had seemingly added the Apollo Theater as a purchase location without first asking the theater. They would apparently decline the offer, as it was in fact owned by a company that was a competitor of the Kiss FM radio station, whom Diddy had retained in order to advertise the event. This relatively minor plunder would become exemplary of the rather nonchalant and negligent attitude that the organizers as a whole seemingly had towards this event. Another such example being the fact that Diddy would later admit that he had not read in depth the promotion contract that he had actually signed, and wasn't seemingly aware that he was actually in charge of buying insurance for the event, or the fact that there was seemingly no organization to whom part of the proceeds would be donated to, as the organization that was mentioned on the event's flyer could could not legally accept this kind of donation, nor had they even allegedly been asked if such a donation would be possible. There was also seemingly confusion amongst the different parties as to who would be in charge of the security and how many guards would be attending the event. The actual number in the end being seriously undersized in relation to the size of the crowd that would turn up. On the day of the planned celebrity game, crowds would begin forming already several hours before the start of the event, which would actually surprise the security personnel who weren't expecting so many people. The gathering crowds would be split into two lines, those who had already bought tickets in advance and those who were looking to buy tickets from the gate. And at first, things appeared to be going smoothly despite the number of people looking to gain entrance to the gym being much larger than what the organizers expected, and in fact, much larger than what the gym's maximum capacity even was. However, things would begin to unravel fast when the celebrities began arriving to the event, with the arrival of Mike Tyson and LL Cool J bringing the crowd to a frenzy, as Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, would later describe to DJ Vlad during an interview.
I did a walk around, so I walked around the top of the floor, went down the steps and went in the gym, and then came across the gym, and I seen that you can go up the steps and be right there at the front door. Everybody was coming in. You seen Dougie Fresh, Red Alert, they was on the mic. People started coming in and everything. It was cool. And then when LL Cool J and Mike Tyson showed up, that must have went pandemonium.
The crowd would begin to push towards the entrance, soon overwhelming the security and gaining entrance to the gym. Unfortunately, as the crowd surged into the lobby and down a short staircase into the gym, at the bottom there were 4 inward opening doors that were closed. This created a deadly bottleneck where the pressure of the crowd still pushing towards the doors would soon begin to cause breathing problems to the people stuck at the bottom. And apparently, Diddy himself would actually manage to open one of these doors and would begin to pull incapacitated people onto the gym floor. Diddy would later apparently describe some of these events to a reporter, explaining that he had to overcome his initial revulsion towards a passed out man with vomit in his mouth. Diddy would apparently wipe the vomit away and begin to administer CPR, saying how he felt the person's death going inside of him. In the end, this tragic event would result in 9 people losing their lives and 29 people getting injured. The following day, the horror of the event became front page news all over the country. And in the coming days and weeks, the New York newspapers would make several pages-long special reports on the events that led up to this tragedy, with the headline of one of these reports asking, "Where's the money?" as the journalists weren't able to find the donation for the alleged AIDS nonprofit that was supposed to be receiving part of the event's proceeds. Also, Diddy from the beginning would be under major scrutiny, as journalists begun digging into matters like who was responsible for the undersized security detail, the oversized crowds, and the missing charity money. And they would even interview people from New York's rap promoter scene who were familiar with Diddy's past events, with one promoter describing the situation as dangerous and unruly. This would be the first time that many New Yorkers will become familiar with Diddy's face, as he and Heavy D would do their own damage control, attempting to explain how things could have gone so terribly wrong. Diddy would seemingly attempt to push the blame on the police, who had been apparently incredibly slow to respond to the events of that evening, and some had even refused to enter the gym after there were already reports of people passed out, as the gym, according to the police, was actually the city college's responsibility. One article would even point out how this tragedy had derailed Diddy's rocket-like rise to the top of the rap industry, whilst describing Diddy as a classic overachiever, not shy about stepping on other people's toes to get what he wants. In the aftermath, then New York City Mayor David Dinkins' administration would release a comprehensive 67-page report titled "A Failure of Responsibility," which would actually place blame on all of the parties involved in the tragedy, including Diddy, who the report would criticize directly for delegating all of the work to his inexperienced assistants, employing an inadequate number of security personnel, failing to inform the crowd that only those with advance tickets would actually be permitted onto the premises, and creating inappropriate marketing by mentioning a charity cause without actually making specific arrangements to donate towards such a cause. However, as soon as Diddy had been placed under the scrutiny for what happened, he would also seemingly be let off the hook, and already, just a few years later, the media would begin putting out what seemed like puff pieces, where Diddy was presented as somebody who had vindicated himself of all wrongdoing, and his career behind the scenes of the rap industry would actually continue to prosper.
I'm famous for like the kid in their minds who threw the tragic City College, man, and that's kind of hard for me sometimes to live with. In the first couple of days when it happened, there was nobody to really answer for what was going on, you know what I'm saying? So I think the media and everybody was trying to figure out why this happened.
In 1999, the families of some of the victims would at least get some vindication, as the promoters of the event were actually found negligent and 50% responsible for the tragedy that unfolded, while the City College were found to be responsible for the other half, and both parties were ordered to pay for the damages to the families of the victims. However, for Diddy, who was already a millionaire at this point, paying a few $100,000 hardly seemed like a real punishment for the loss of 9 lives, and meanwhile, he would continue causing havoc in the industry. By autumn 1992, Diddy was riding high after signing his latest talent, the notorious B.I.G., aka aka Biggie Smalls, whose debut album Ready to Die was nearing completion. But there was a problem. Uptown's distributor MCA Records deemed the album's lyrics to be too explicit and refused to release it. Frustrated and disheartened, both Diddy and Biggie voiced their disappointment, which according to the Uptown Records founder Andre Harrell was the real issue that ultimately led to Diddy leaving Uptown Records in late 1992, as Harrell didn't want to be the one to tell the new generation what was acceptable and what was not.
And the final straw for me was when MCA wanted me to not put out the Biggie Smalls album because they didn't like the subject matter, and they wanted me to tell him he's got to change his tone. And it wasn't up to me, I felt, to tell a generation what they could and could not do artistically.
Determined to keep pushing forward, however, Diddy channeled his ambition into launching his own label, the now iconic Bad Boy Entertainment, in early 1993. Wasting no time, he built up an impressive lineup of artists, and by September 1994, Bad Boy had released Ready to Die. Biggie's groundbreaking album resonated deeply with hip-hop fans, solidifying itself as a rap classic and receiving perfect reviews from some of the industry's most respected outlets. This marked the beginning of a meteoric rise for Bad Boy, which quickly became one of the biggest labels in hip-hop throughout the 90s, with a roster that included Craig Mack, Biggie Smalls, Lil' Kim, and The Lox. Bad Boy amassed a catalogue of hit singles and critically acclaimed albums that would dominate the charts, and Diddy's influence extended well beyond music, establishing him as a celebrity and prominent figure in the New York social scene. But unfortunately, in the early 90s, a fierce rivalry also erupted between Death Row Records and Bad Boy Records, due to their association with two of hip-hop's biggest stars at the time, Tupac Shakur on Death Row and Biggie on Bad Boy. The rivalry between Death Row and Bad Boy escalated significantly following the tragic shooting of Jake Robles, aka Big Jake, in 1995.
I'm just gonna kick a little something. Everybody want to know why people bang, why people kill, why people do this, sell dope, and you can't just look at the individuals, because you know you have to look at the environment that they're set in that creates these conditions for them to have to live and do the things that they do, and so we just kicking it like that. You know, we ain't out here essing on our chest, but you know, it's like everybody out here want to be a tough guy, killer, a gangster, you understand? But most of the killers and gangsters I know either got all day or dead. So everybody out here just living. So, you know, we kicking it from that perspective.
At one time they were friends, but ultimately after this, Diddy and Death Row co-founder Marion Suge Knight found themselves on opposite sides after Big Jake, Knight's friend and security guard, was killed outside an Atlanta nightclub following a confrontation with the Bad Boy entourage. The incident unfolded at the Platinum City Club, where both camps were celebrating musician Jermaine Dupri's birthday. Tensions apparently flared during that night, and later on, an argument erupted, turning the situation chaotic and ultimately leading to Big Jake being shot, with the assailant then fleeing the scene. This deepened the rift between the two record labels and intensified the atmosphere of hostility that would plague the hip-hop community in years to come. Big Jake would pass away weeks later at an Atlanta hospital, and Diddy would deny involvement in the shooting, which Suge Knight reportedly held him responsible for. Diddy's bodyguard, Anthony Wolf Jones, would be a person of interest in the case, with multiple witnesses, including an off-duty police officer, alleging to have seen him fire the shot that killed Robles. Wolf himself would actually be killed in 2003 following an altercation with BMF founder Big Meech. According to Trey D, a rapper from Snoop Dogg's G-Funk group, the Eastsiders, the murder of Robles was the last straw in the Death Row Bad Boy beef.
Well, who got killed in Death Row? I mean, obviously Tupac.
Well, Jake Robles got killed.
Jake Robles?
Yeah.
Who was that?
The one that got killed at the party in Atlanta.
Oh, Suge's friend?
Yeah.
Aha.
Yeah.
Were you around during that time?
Jake was a good dude, yeah. Jake was a good dude.
So was that like Suge's like best friend, or?
He was a good friend of him. He was a very good friend. You see them together often, and I think Suge trusted him a lot.
Okay. In the Jake Robles incident, they actually showed, you know, him getting killed, and then, you know, Suge being there. And I guess Puffy was there at the club also, and Suge started blaming Puffy for the shooting. Was Jake getting killed? Was that like the straw that broke the camel's back in a way with Suge and that?
Seemed to be. It seemed to be. You know, I wasn't familiar with the details, but the party that he attended, it was a lot of industry people there. He was supposedly looking for Suge or waiting for Suge or something, and in the process, it was a flare-up between the two camps. And he wound up dead.
But as the 90s went on, Diddy would continue raising hell in the recording industry, and it would seem that no executives were off limits. 3 years later, on April the 16th, 1998, Diddy attacked music executive Steve Stout after Stout mistakenly sent MTV a controversial version of legendary New York rapper and Queens native Nas's Hate Me Now music video, which featured Diddy and depicted him as Jesus Christ being crucified. According to former Compton police officer who later became Death Row Records head of security, Reggie Wright Jr., Diddy consulted with his preacher that if he put out a video of him on the across the video would be his downfall.
But the main thing that y'all know Steve Stoutes for is he's the gentleman that Puffy got mad about the video when he was put on the cross, and how, you go and film something, then I think he said he wanted to talk to his reverend or his preacher or his pastor or something like that, and he told him that won't be a good look for him, and he kind of predicted that you're going to have a downfall because of that, being on that cross. Maybe it's coming true in 2024.
Furious that this part of the video had not been edited out, Diddy confronted Stout in his New York office, where he and 2 associates assaulted him with a phone. Diddy would state that he handled the situation poorly and later publicly apologized, with Stout dropping the charges. But it was rumored that Diddy actually paid $500,000 to Stout and was ordered to attend a one-day anger management class. The cycle of Diddy being associated with chaos in the streets and in the boardroom was just beginning, however. As lives had already been lost in connection with Diddy's activities, from here, more innocent people would continue to be harmed as a result of Diddy's behavior, and the next incident would become one of the most high-profile incidents of Diddy's career so far, leaving numerous lives ruined, both strangers and the people that were supposedly closest to him. On the 27th of December 1999, Diddy and his girlfriend at the time, global pop star Jennifer Lopez, and his bad boy artist Jamal Shine Barrow were at a club in New York when a confrontation escalated after Diddy apparently knocked a drink out of the hands of a local gangster named Matthew Scar Allen. This sparked an argument during which Allen actually threatened Shine, and somebody apparently threw money in Diddy's face. Chaos would ensue, and all 3 men reportedly drew guns, and someone would allegedly fire 3 shots in the packed club, injuring 3 people. Diddy was arrested with 2 9mm guns in his car and ended up facing 4 weapons charges, along with accusations of bribing his driver to take the blame for the guns. Although a witness claimed to have seen both men firing their weapons, Diddy himself was actually acquitted of all the charges in 2001. This was because differing stories emerged on his role in the shooting, with him stating that he did not own nor possess a gun on the said night. His girlfriend Jennifer Lopez would make headlines for her supposed night in hell, while Shine was the one who truly suffered, being convicted on 5 out of 8 counts and sentenced to a brutal 10 years in prison. Now, before we dive into what happened to Shine after his conviction, let's take a step back and get to know this man. Shine, a name that used to echo through the halls of hip-hop, once stood alongside Diddy as the next big thing on Bad Boy Records. But his story took a turn that very few could have predicted. His gritty style and undeniable talent, along with comparisons to the legendary Biggie Smalls, all pointed to a bright future. And yet, one night at a club in New York would change everything, ultimately landing him in prison for 10 years, followed by a swift deportation. Now, if you want a much deeper refresher on the events that brought Shine to that moment, you can go and check out my full video that I did on this a few years back. But the short of it is that Shine ultimately ended up taking the fall for the shooting, Diddy got off scot-free, and Shine served 10 years in prison, being released in 2009, with his life taking a dramatic turn. In a 2022 interview with Rolling Stone, Shine summed up his journey, saying, "I've been training for this my entire life because I grew up with one of the greatest CEOs ever in Diddy." However, in a recent statement in September 2024, after the barrage of Diddy's sexual misconduct allegations, Shine would voice that his former mentor actually destroyed his life, particularly regarding that 1999 New York nightclub shooting incident.
Let us not lose sight of what the cold hard facts are. This was not someone who I vacationed with and who he and I enjoyed this great intimate relationship of brotherhood. This is someone who destroyed my life.
Shine would recall that despite not having a close relationship with Diddy, he was swept up in a night that ultimately led to his conviction, and nearly a decade in prison, while Diddy was acquitted. He alleged that Diddy called witnesses in against him, contributing to his imprisonment. And despite these feelings, Shine, now a leader in Belizean politics, stated that he had indeed forgiven Diddy, because he recognized Diddy's potential to contribute to Belize through educational and developmental investments. In November the 5th, 2024, in an interview with Channel 5 Belize, Shine's true feelings would once again come out about his disappointment, stating that he was the fall guy in the 1999 nightclub shooting in New York, and in a statement, he would maintain his innocence in that shooting all these decades later, actually thanking Diddy for all he'd done for the people of Belize, and saying that he hoped justice would be served for both Diddy and the alleged victims. Shine's story says a lot about the misguided loyalty that those close to Diddy gave to him, but if you read between the lines of Shine's graceful statements, you begin to see that duplicitous side of Diddy shining through. This is a man who throws stones and hides his hand, and will happily let those closest and most loyal to him have their lives destroyed to preserve Diddy's image and freedom. And with Diddy getting off scot-free in this case, zero lessons were learned, and as we get into the 2000s, we'll see Diddy in and out of court more than ever, as this untouchable Teflon Titan only got more bold and belligerent in his selfish and destructive behavior. In 2001, Diddy was sued by his former driver, Wardell Fenderson, for $3 million. Fenderson alleged that Diddy had offered him $50,000 to lie to the police about a gun that was found in Diddy's car following that 1999 nightclub shooting incident that involved Diddy, his then girlfriend Jennifer Lopez, and the rapper Shine. Fenderson claimed that after the shooting, Diddy actually pressured him to falsely testify about the presence of a gun in the vehicle. And as a result, Fenderson stated that he suffered emotional distress and physical injuries from the incident. The lawsuit was settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, and this represented something of a loose end for Diddy following that Shine case. But once again, Diddy was able to pull out his checkbook and make the problem go away. And sadly, Diddy's dishonorable habits would only continue throughout the decade. On March 26, 2001, Michigan TV host Roger Mills filed a lawsuit against Diddy, accusing him of an assault that allegedly took place following a 1999 interview. Mills claimed that during an interview with WCHB-TV in Detroit, he questioned Diddy about his rumored connection to the murder of the Notorious B.I.G., a topic that apparently sparked anger. The Notorious B.I.G., born Christopher Wallace, was killed in a drive-by shooting in Los Angeles in 1997, just months after a similar incident that took the life of Tupac Shakur. According to Mills, Diddy's representative requested the tape of the interview, but when Mills refused to hand it over, Diddy's entourage allegedly attacked the host and forcibly took the tape. Diddy's team vehemently denied the claims, with the spokeswoman accusing Mills of attempting to extort the rapper. In a 2004 civil trial, a jury ultimately sided with Diddy, ruling in his favor and dismissing the allegations. In this case, it wasn't a payment that helped him avoid liability, but likely his access to a high-ticket legal team was still enabling Diddy to convert his questionable riches into bulletproof legal defenses that would allow him to avoid responsibility for anything that went down. But ironically for Diddy, it would seem that he had endless money to fight charges, but he would seemingly get stingy when it came to supporting his own family. In 2001, model Kim Porter sued Diddy for additional child support following a prolonged dispute regarding their then 3-year-old son, Christian Combs. Now, this case was actually settled, with Diddy agreeing to pay Porter a substantial 5-figure monthly sum covering Christian's education and medical expenses until he turned 21. Diddy, who had actually fathered 6 children by 4 different women, co-parented 4 of these children with Porter, including Christian and twin daughters Delilah and Jessie, and in addition to that, he would actually adopt Porter's son Quincy from a previous relationship with Albie Shaw. Diddy's other children include Justin, whose mother is Misa Hilton, and Chance, born to Sarah Chapman. His youngest daughter Love was born in 2022 to Dana Tran. Despite their on and off relationship, Diddy and Kim Porter maintained a co-parenting relationship until Porter's tragic and sudden death in 2019 from pneumonia. Now, rumors have swirled for years questioning the circumstances of Kim Porter's death, amid rumors that she was planning to release a tell-all book exposing Diddy. And while we may never know whether or not there was more dark activities going on behind the scenes of Kim and Diddy's relationship, it would seem that, as always, just before Diddy's due to be exposed to a downfall, things would always seem to just miraculously work out in his favor. And as the decade progressed, Diddy would continue to catch cases and finesse his way out of tight spots at the very last minute. In May 2002, North Carolina resident Cedric Bobby Lemon sued Diddy, alleging that while working as a limousine driver, he wore an identification badge that permitted him to stand backstage during a concert by Mary J. Blige in June 1995. Now, Diddy was Blige's manager at the time, and according to the lawsuit, as Blige's set ended, 2 bodyguards attempted to clear the backstage area in order to escort Blige out of the venue. These 2 would then allegedly punch Lemon in the head, kick him in the back, and break his right ankle. The lawsuit stated that Combs was negligent because he failed to properly train these bodyguards. Initially, in 2002, a judge had entered a default judgment against Diddy for $2.45 million because he failed to answer the allegations in Lemon's lawsuit. But these damages were later reduced to $450,000, and in 2004, the $450K lawsuit judgment was actually vacated after the North Carolina Court of Appeals ruled that Lemon's case didn't meet the standards of a default judgment. Diddy and Lemon would then settle out of court in 2006 for an undisclosed amount. Now, it's important to note that Lemon had earlier brought the first action in July 1996 against several defendants, including the 2 bodyguards and their employer, Steve Lucas Management. That action resulted in judgment against Steve Lucas Management, but Lemon had also brought a second action in May 1999 against Mary J. Blige, which had then been settled out of court. Since the case was settled out of court, we might never know exactly what happened definitively, but by this point, it's not hard to imagine Diddy making use of his hired goons to inflict serious bodily harm on somebody who doesn't do exactly what he wants. And it would appear that Diddy was still just as ruthless in the boardroom as he was in backstage confrontations. In 2003, former Bad Boy Entertainment executive Kirk Burroughs filed a $25 million lawsuit against Diddy and attorney Kenneth Meiselas, with Bad Boy Entertainment also named as defendant for using intimidation tactics back in 1996. Burroughs claimed that Diddy and Meiselas had allegedly threatened him with a baseball bat, forcing him to sign over his rights to company stock, making him the victim of an extortion and racketeering scheme carried out by Diddy. Burroughs, who had been fired from Bad Boy Entertainment in 1997, claimed that in 1993 he was promised a 25% ownership stake in Bad Boy, which he would later be forced to relinquish in 1996 under threats of violence, something that he would actually explain in detail in an interview with the Art of Dialogue channel.
I had 25% of the company. I didn't know why he needed to get that back from me and then give it back to me again. I didn't understand that. So he came into my office one day unexpected, him and Kenny Marsalis, they had it planned out. Kenny had the briefcase with all the stock certificates in it, and Diddy had the bat. Not like, I'm gonna beat out of you with the bat, but he had the bat like, man, we got to do this. This has to happen. I didn't feel I was gonna get beat down in that office, in all honesty. I got people that could jump out of the shadows in a minute. I wasn't threatened by him. What I was messed up over was the fact that I started this company with you from day zero, and now the one solid thing that you told me I had, you want to take that back and do a return to me on that at this critical time that we're renegotiating and getting a step up on the contract. When he told me it was about all of that renegotiating and that I should trust, I did, begrudgingly, angry, upset, it wasn't right. I did it. He got the stock back. I went on, tried to get over that, kept doing my job, doing what I had to do, delivering everything. And once again, I was caught up in the job. I forgot all about it. And next thing you know, we had the snafu. I was fired. And he just said, oh, okay, bye. And since he had never given me the stock back, he never said that he would pay me anything or give me anything. He just avoided me all these years.
He would also assert that Combs periodically promised to restore his interest in Bad Boy, but in 2001 made it clear that this promise would not be fulfilled. Additionally, Burroughs would claim that Diddy and Marsalis interfered with his management contracts and blackballed him from the music industry. Burroughs would bring 4 claims under the Federal Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, or RICO charges, as well as state law claims. However, the court would find that the RICO claims were barred by the statute of limitations and that his allegations failed to meet the legal standards for a RICO violation. After years of litigation, the court would dismiss all of Burroughs' federal claims with prejudice, while his state law claims would be dismissed without prejudice on March 12, 2004. And at this point, things were getting strange, and it seemed that no matter how violent or ruthless Diddy was being perceived as in the public eye, he simply couldn't stop and wouldn't stop. In the next lawsuit, Damian Vasquez alleged that in February 2002, after being told that he could no longer work in the Bad Boy Entertainment main offices, he was given an envelope containing music industry contact sheets by a Bad Boy HR employee where he was advised to send his resume. A month later, following a car accident he was involved in, the envelope was stored in his parents' garage, which he rediscovered in late 2003. Upon reviewing the contents, he realized that the contact sheets included personal information about Diddy. Recognizing this, he reached out to Diddy to arrange their return, but shortly afterward, Vasquez was summoned to meet with Bad Boy HR, where he was questioned about the contact sheets, but not accused of any wrongdoing. Despite working for Bad Boy, he had not been paid his wages and ultimately decided not to return to work after the 2003 holidays. According to the lawsuit, in early 2004, Vasquez learned that Diddy was missing a Grammy Award that he had won the same year, and he would email Diddy with apparent information that he believed might help him find it, but instead, he was allegedly called to a police precinct under the pretense of a job interview. Once there, he was interrogated by NYPD detective Gloria Frazier, who was also mentioned as a defendant in the suit, among others, regarding this missing Grammy. He would apparently be coerced to confess after being threatened with incarceration, and despite being a diabetic, Vasquez's health needs were neglected, leading him to collapse and be hospitalized. After his release from hospital, Vasquez was brought back to the precinct and repeatedly questioned about the Grammy by Frazier and 3 more officers. But after this interrogation failed, he would then be charged with minor crimes that had no connection to the missing award, and he would allege that he was held without being properly informed of his rights and later arraigned on charges of aggravated harassment, petty larceny, and possession of stolen property in concert with Diddy and Bad Boy employees. But all charges were dropped on April 7th, 2005. But this situation was particularly disturbing, as it seemingly hinted towards some kind of collusion between Diddy and New York City law enforcement. With the possibility of the authorities being in Diddy's pocket, this would make him an incredibly dangerous enemy. But that didn't stop people continuing to take him to task and putting him in the courtroom to try and make him right his wrongs. In 2005, Bridgeport Music Incorporated and Westbound Records Incorporated would file a lawsuit against the estate of Christopher Wallace, or the Notorious B.I.G., as well as Diddy and Bad Boy Records, claiming that the title track of the album Ready to Die contained an unlicensed sample from the Ohio Players song Singing in the Morning. The lawsuit alleged that Bad Boy Records and its affiliates released Ready to Die without securing proper clearance for the Ohio Players track, leading to copyright infringement. The case centered around claims that Ready to Die contained the unauthorized sample, which was substituted into the track after a denied request to sample Jimi Hendrix's Power to Love. Despite knowing that this sample hadn't been cleared, Bad Boy proceeded with the album's release anyway. Bridgeport Music, a Michigan music publishing company which held the copyright to the composition, and Westbound Records, which held the rights to the sound recording, pursued damages for this infringement. And in this case, the jury would actually find Diddy and Bad Boy Records, as well as the other defendants, liable for copyright infringement. And they awarded $733,878 in compensatory damages, which was split between Bridgeport Music and Westbound Records. Bridgeport Music opted for statutory damages and received the maximum award of $150,000 under the Copyright Act. Additionally, Westbound Records was awarded $3.5 million in punitive damages due to the willful nature of this infringement. Perhaps this was one of the few cases where Diddy was unable to buy or intimidate his way out of things. However, as a multi-millionaire and future billionaire, Diddy probably saw something like this as trivial as a speeding ticket. But blood was now in the water, and it would seem that at least large corporations were not afraid of taking Diddy to court and trying to get a piece of his pockets. Also in 2005, Diddy and publishing giant Random House reached a settlement after a dispute over an incomplete memoir. Diddy had reportedly been given a $300,000 advance in 1999 to write the book, but he never delivered the manuscript. And as a result, the planned memoir was scrapped and the legal matter was settled out of court. Perhaps with all of the rumors of various tell-all books on Diddy circulating, he didn't fancy confronting his own past and attempting to put his story out there to the public. But once again, it shows that Diddy is not necessarily someone who can be trusted to stick to their obligations in relationships or business, and this would be a trend that continued to get exposed in lawsuit after lawsuit. In 2007, former consultant James Sabatino, who's currently incarcerated over a string of criminal fraud cases racked up over years, actually sued Diddy for $19 million, claiming that Diddy had failed to pay him in full for a 1994 recording by the notorious B.I.G. made in Miami. Sabatino alleged that he was owed money for the unreleased material, but that lawsuit was dismissed in 2009. Now separately, Sabatino actually found himself at the center of a major scandal in 2008 when a fraudulent story connected to both Diddy and the late Tupac Shakur was published by the Los Angeles Times. Sabatino had apparently fed the paper fake FBI documents claiming to link Diddy to the attempted murder of Tupac in 1994. And insanely, the paper actually published these documents without any oversight, publicly implicating Diddy in Shakur's 1994 shooting. This mistake would actually force the paper to issue a public retraction after these claims were proven to be fabricated. However, as time's gone on, more and more people have seemingly analyzed the alleged connection between Diddy and the tragic fate of Tupac Shakur. Since the arrest of one of the alleged killers of Tupac, Keefe D, it's looking more and more likely that Diddy might actually end up finally being implicated in this murder officially. But in the meantime, Diddy would continue on for decades with his debaucherous behavior. In 2007, Gerard Reignitzer sued Diddy, alleging that Diddy had assaulted him outside of a Hollywood nightclub. Reignitzer claimed that the altercation occurred after he approached Diddy, who was speaking to his girlfriend. And according to the lawsuit, Diddy actually punched the man in the face, causing him to fly backwards several feet and allegedly pushed the girlfriend as well. Diddy's lawyer actually dismissed these claims as fabricated, calling it another example of an opportunist trying to exploit Diddy's celebrity status. The lawsuit was settled in 2008, once again for an undisclosed amount, but once again, it's chilling to see Diddy try and brand his accusers as opportunists when he's seemingly the biggest opportunist out here, taking every opportunity to assault, rob, and steal from anyone who enters his orbit. And with the tape of him brutally assaulting his ex-girlfriend Cassie that circulated decades later, it's certainly not a stretch for me to imagine Diddy being the ultimate opportunist assaulting a man and his girlfriend, and of course, paying his way out of any consequences. But from here, the disgusting behavior of Diddy would only continue. On October the 22nd, 2007, Jonathan Lee Riches, an American renowned for his unorthodox pursuit of wealth and legal antics, famous for filing suits against prominent figures like Bill Gates and Pope Benedict, and a man who even went on to sue Guinness itself after discovering that they listed him as holding the record for the most lawsuits filed, would file bizarre allegations targeted at Diddy and Bad Boy Records. Riches would claim that Diddy engaged in various acts including racketeering and conspiring with various public figures and companies in highly unlikely scenarios. The claims also involved an alleged conspiracy that included creating subliminal messages in music and using various tactics to control the entertainment industry. He was apparently seeking $25 million along with a temporary restraining order from Diddy because, as he stated in the suit, his life was in danger. The lawsuit, however, was filled with improbable and sensational statements rather than verifiable facts, resembling more of an elaborate, exaggerated narrative rather than a substantial and official legal claim. Now, this is probably the most unbelievable lawsuit in Diddy's entire career of being sued, and arguably, this genuine opportunist actually gave Diddy the perfect smokescreen to dismiss many possibly genuine allegations as being the result of the same sort of embellishments. But as we get into the 2010s, we would see Diddy continue to be sued, admittedly with less frequency, as the diddler seemingly made an effort to try and control his public image and avoid controversy with limited results. In 2010, former Bad Boy Records executive Francesca Spero filed a $12 million lawsuit against Diddy, alleging age discrimination and wrongful termination. Spero, who had worked with Diddy for years, claimed that she was fired because of her age and disability following a 2008 hip surgery. At the time of the lawsuit, Spero was 51 years old and argued that their professional relationship had deteriorated due to her age and health issues. Diddy's legal team denied the accusations, but the lawsuit was once again ultimately settled in 2011 for an undisclosed amount. Now, Diddy doesn't strike me as somebody somebody who looks out for those around him. And the harsh reality appears to be that this is a man who uses people up and discards them as soon as they're no longer useful. And it seems that for Diddy, the world revolves around him, and he extends very little empathy to those working with or close to him. But ironically, despite this deranged creep chasing that celebrity lifestyle, this short-tempered man-child still can't seem to process his emotions when the predictable aspects of his celebrity life played out in front of him. In 2011, paparazzo Gustavo Garces filed a lawsuit against Diddy, claiming that Diddy's bodyguards assaulted him on New Year's Eve whilst he was trying to take a photo of the rapper outside the Dream Hotel in Miami. Garces alleged that the bodyguards used excessive force during the incident. This lawsuit was settled in 2017, with Garces agreeing to receive $35,000 in exchange for releasing Diddy and his bodyguards and their insurance company from further liability. By this point, we're building up a profile of Diddy as a pretty pathetic and short-tempered individual who can't even bear his photo being taken without ordering an assault. The fact that this man was still able to function and navigate society unchecked at this point and for so long is truly baffling. And it really makes you wonder, like, really, are the people around Diddy as bad as him? Because there's clearly a vacuum of morals in his inner circle. And I think it's important to point out that these goons assaulting people on Diddy's behalf are just as bad as him and should be held equally responsible. For every assault that Diddy committed, there's an army of goons, bodyguards, handlers, and employees just as willing to help him commit crimes and cover it up. Now, it's my hope that eventually these people around him will also be held to account for their heinous crimes too. However, the likelihood of that happening is still pretty in question. In 2017, Diddy was sued by his former personal chef, Cindy Rueda, for $15 million. Rueda accused Diddy of sexual harassment, claiming that she had walked in on him having sex while serving him breakfast, and that he, along with another boss, made inappropriate comments about her. She also alleged that Diddy exposed himself to her and forced her to work long hours without proper breaks or compensation for overtime and travel. Rueda further claimed that she was fired after raising these concerns, and the lawsuit was once again settled in 2019 for an undisclosed amount. Now, I personally find these sorts of accusations to be incredibly chilling. And it's clear at this point that Diddy had no respect for women or people's personal boundaries. But at this point, with multiple decades of success under his belt, over a dozen lawsuits or legal cases, there's very few examples of him actually facing reasonable consequences for things that he's allegedly done. I would say that Diddy likely saw himself as like a god, someone that couldn't be touched. Anything he said goes. And if you're unlucky enough to be in front of him and not willing to do exactly what he wants, you better prepare to be violated with no chance of justice and maybe a little out-of-court settlement. But thankfully, as we get into the 2020s, we begin to see the downfall of this disgusting excuse of a man, as eventually the house of cards would begin to topple, as a series of extremely brave women and men would stand up and say that it's time to stop this repulsive monster. In 2022, Diddy was sued by Raven Wales Walden, a former nanny who alleged wrongful termination after disclosing her pregnancy in 2020. Wales Walden, who claimed to be a niece of Diddy's late ex-partner Kim Porter, said that she was fired due to pregnancy discrimination. In response, Diddy denied both the claim that Wales Walden was Porter's niece and that any discrimination took place. A spokesperson for Diddy called the lawsuit a meritless shakedown to extort money from Mr. Combs. The case was dropped by the former nanny in April 2024, and this case itself wasn't really a significant step towards the downfall of Diddy, but it once again shows that this is a man who has zero regard for others, their situation, or his legal obligations to look out for them. Once again, Diddy seems like the kind of guy that if he finds you to no longer be of use to serve him, he will discard you like a piece of trash. But thankfully, soon as the dominoes begun to topple, Diddy would go head to head with a partner in one of his most lucrative business ventures, with the ultimate result being an incredible L that saw Diddy lose everything that he had worked for years. On May 31st, 2023, Diddy filed a lawsuit against Diageo, a major British multinational in the alcoholic beverage industry. With over 200 brands, including Johnnie Walker, Guinness, Patron, and Smirnoff, Diageo stands as one of the world's leading giants in the liquor industry. This lawsuit, actually coming from Diddy, would accuse Diageo of racial discrimination, claiming that the company had failed to fulfill commitments within their long-standing partnership. This began in 2007 when Diddy partnered to promote the Ciroc vodka brand, and their partnership would expand in 2014 to include De Leon tequila. Diddy's relationship with Diageo began as a groundbreaking business move, when in 2007, Diddy entered into a strategic partnership with the company to promote Ciroc vodka, a brand that was struggling to gain traction at the time. And through his influence and brand power, Diddy would transform Ciroc into one of the top-selling vodkas in the US, selling more than 2 million cases a year. By 2014, Diddy and Diageo would expand their partnership to include De Leon tequila, which they jointly owned and promoted. Diddy's influence was pivotal to Ciroc's success, with aggressive marketing strategies and frequent integration of the brand into his music, nightlife, and social media presence.
An exclusive event happening at the Combs estate tonight, sponsored by Voila, the smoothest, the greatest, the best. If you're gonna do it right. So, you know, when you view it, retweet it, Let's get it viral, because we're going to rock the new year, baby.
Initially, the partnership was valued at $100 million and structured in a way that allowed Diddy to take a share in the brand's profits. But by the time the lawsuit surfaced, the partnership had been ongoing for nearly 16 years, highlighting the significant role that Diddy had played in Diageo's spirits portfolio. In the lawsuit, Diddy alleged that Diageo systemically treated his brands as urban products, a label that restricted Ciroc and De Leon's distribution and marketing opportunities. He claimed that Diageo typecasted his brands and limited them to certain geographic areas and demographics, which prevented them from reaching the same level of exposure as Diageo's other celebrity-backed products, such as George Clooney's Casamigos tequila. Clooney's brand was actually purchased by Diageo for $1 billion in 2017 and was allegedly prioritized and widely promoted without the same limitations placed on Diddy's brand. Diddy argued that Diageo's failure to invest in Ciroc and De Leon on the same scale as other brands was a clear indication of racial bias. According to the lawsuit, Diageo representatives had used racially discriminatory terms to describe the brands, implying that they were only relevant to specific urban or black consumer markets. Diddy argued that this not only limited their market potential, but also tarnished the brand reputation that he had worked hard to cultivate. Diageo would quickly respond to the lawsuit, categorically denying the accusations of racism, and the company would claim that any disputes in the partnership stemmed purely from business disagreements, and argued that the lack of investment in De Leon was due to Diddy's own reluctance to make necessary contributions himself, apparently not consistently funding De Leon in line with the brand's growth needs, investing only $1,000 while Diageo had invested over $100 million to grow De Leon tequila. Furthermore, Diageo accused Diddy of demanding large payouts whilst threatening to publicly accuse the company of racism. For instance, in May 2021, after Diageo publicly committed $100 million for COVID recovery programs to help pubs and bars resume post-lockdown trade, Diddy allegedly demanded $100 million for himself, warning that he would reach out to every news outlet and burn the house down by accusing Diageo of racial discrimination if they didn't comply. Diddy's attorney John C. Houston would respond by saying Diageo dismissed Diddy's genuine concerns as threats. Had they honored their agreements, Houston argued, we wouldn't be in court today. Diageo denied Diddy's accusations about watermelon tequila and racial stereotyping, asserting that the flavor was actually suggested due to Ciroc Summer Watermelon's big success. They also refuted claims of targeting Ciroc and De Leon as ethnic brands, explaining the urban African-American brand was just a misperception that had been noted by an external consultant. The legal dispute would escalate when in July 2023, a New York Supreme Court judge ordered the unsealing of redacted details from Diddy's lawsuit. These documents revealed a 2021 agreement between Combs and Diageo in which the company reportedly agreed to treat De Leon at least as favorably as their other brands. This agreement, according to Diddy, was evidence that Diageo had acknowledged past failures in not supporting De Leon, but had not made good on their promises. The unsealed documents also included internal communications that Diddy claimed were indicative of racial bias, though the specific language used in these communications was not publicly released. The documents intensified the media's focus on the case and added a layer of scrutiny regarding Diageo's handling of celebrity partnerships, especially those with minority figures. After months of legal back and forths, Diddy and Diageo would reach a settlement in January 2024, and as part of the agreement, Diddy basically withdrew his lawsuit and severed ties with Diageo, ending a 16-year partnership that had transformed both Ciroc and De Leon into major names in the spirit industry. But according to the settlement terms, Diageo had acquired full ownership of both Ciroc vodka and De Leon tequila, with no further public comments from either party on the financial details or specific conditions of the agreement. Just as the dust from the Diageo lawsuit would settle, Diddy's reputation would face a critical hit when in November, a new lawsuit emerged that would turn his whole world upside down. The public fallout from the Diageo lawsuit was barely settling when on November the 16th, 2023, Diddy faced another explosive scandal, this time from his former girlfriend, singer Cassie Ventura. Cassie filed a federal lawsuit in New York alleging years of severe abuse throughout their on and off relationship, which began in 2006 when she was just 19 and when Diddy was 37. Cassie's lawsuit, filed under New York's Adult Survivors Act, brought forth shocking accusations that shook the music and entertainment industries. Cassie alleged that shortly after signing with Bad Boy Records, Diddy exerted complete control over her life, creating an environment where she felt trapped and isolated.
So when he was doing that, I heard he also had a young lady that was with him named Cassie that had a record out. And I started hearing this record that was haunting me in the clubs. And it was, it was Cassie's record. And I would hear it everywhere I was at. When I saw her and I met her and I saw this DVD on her, hopefully we can play that. That's what kind of made me like really fall in love with the project, because I saw something more than just records. I saw something that there was a personality there. It was something that, the whole world could fall in love with.
Cassie claimed that Diddy not only controlled her career, but also restricted her personal life, ensuring that she was wholly dependent on him and unable to break free from his influence. Cassie's account described Diddy's influence as suffocating, painting a picture of a power dynamic where she felt there was no escape. In her lawsuit, Cassie detailed a history of physical sexual and emotional abuse that spanned nearly a decade. The most severe of these allegations included an incident in 2018 where she claimed that Diddy actually raped her. She described this event as the culmination of years of intimidation and manipulation, alleging that Diddy used his power and influence to repeatedly harm her without any fear of consequence. This pattern of manipulation, Cassie argued, was Diddy's method of asserting control and further isolating her from any support network. One particularly notable accusation involved Diddy's alleged interference with her relationship with rapper Kid Cudi. According to Cassie, when she expressed interest in pursuing a relationship with Cudi, Diddy grew so jealous and livid, he retaliated by orchestrating the blowing up of Cudi's car. And Kid Cudi, through a representative, would later confirm that his car had indeed been destroyed in an incident that aligned with Cassie's timeline and accusations. Diddy's response to the lawsuit was swift, adamant. He vehemently denied all accusations, claiming that Cassie had attempted to extort him for $30 million before filing the suit. His legal team framed the lawsuit as a calculated attempt to smear his reputation and extort a financial settlement and commit blatant blackmail. Despite Diddy's defense, the allegations swiftly attracted intense media scrutiny, leading fans and critics alike to question his public image and past. But in a surprising turn, Diddy and Cassie would reach a settlement just one day after the lawsuit's filing. The terms were undisclosed, but Cassie requested a dismissal of the case with prejudice, meaning that she would not be able to refile her claims. Diddy's lawyer emphasized that the settlement did not imply guilt, while Cassie stated that the settlement allowed her some level of control over a deeply personal and traumatic chapter in her life. Cassie's lawsuit, though quickly settled, was pivotal as it opened the door for even more allegations against Diddy. Her case put a spotlight on Diddy's alleged history of abuse, prompting others to come forward. By the time Cassie's case concluded, it had set off a chain reaction, inspiring a wave of public statements and additional lawsuits that scrutinized Diddy's past relationships and professional conduct. Legal experts noted that her lawsuit, filed under the Adult Survivors Act, could serve as a catalyst for other survivors who had been silenced by time constraints under previous statutes of limitations. Diddy would post on Instagram denying misconduct allegations that had started to come out, vowing to fight the allegations and clear his name. But just months after Cassie's explosive lawsuit, the case took a disturbing turn when video evidence surfaced, adding weight to her allegations. On May the 17th, 2024, CNN released footage showing Diddy assaulting Cassie in a hotel hallway in Los Angeles. The video shows Diddy chasing Cassie down a hallway, cornering her as she tries to get away. Captured in March 2016, the video was a haunting visual confirmation of the abuse that Cassie had described in her lawsuit. The footage quickly went viral, shocking the public and intensifying scrutiny on Diddy's past actions and the dynamics of their former relationship. This brutal scene mirrored the allegations that Cassie made in her November lawsuit, where she described a similar assault that left her with a black eye. The release of the video footage brought an unsettling, real-life dimension to her accusations, shifting the narrative away from hearsay to the stark reality that we all saw in that video. Just 2 days after the footage went public, Cassie took to Instagram to address the video, and in a heartfelt post, she described the enduring impact of domestic violence on her life, stating that the abuse had broken her and left her in a permanent state of recovery. Celebrities took to Twitter in shock after viewing the graphic footage, with many expressing outrage and calling out Diddy for the brutality that he displayed in this assault on Cassie. This was the final nail in the coffin for Diddy's reputation, and there's no way that anybody could ever believe a word that comes out of his mouth after this. Just think of the contrast between his lie of a lie, the manufactured and projected image that he puts out, compared to how he was truly behaving. Just says it all. When I saw that video, it made me believe nearly every accusation against him for the last 33 years. Diddy would issue a statement actually addressing this incident. In a video he posted to Instagram, he expressed regret over his actions, acknowledging that his behavior had been unacceptable.
My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. I'm disgusted, but I'm committed to be a better man each and every day. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm truly sorry.
However, his apology received mixed reactions. While some saw it as an attempt to take accountability, most criticized the timing, arguing that his apology only came after undeniable evidence had been released. Critics, including Cassie's lawyers, questioned whether the apology was sincere or merely damage control in response to the backlash that he had faced. The apology video, while brief, was widely circulated and added further fuel to the controversy surrounding Diddy's legacy and behavior. The release of this footage marked a significant moment in Cassie's case, shifting public perception in a way that very few allegations alone could have achieved. The video evidence served as a powerful testament to the abuse that Cassie had described, bringing her words to life, reinforcing the severity and accuracy of her claims. For Diddy, the footage was a critical blow to his reputation. Once known as a titan in the music industry, his image was now marred by the undeniable evidence of physical abuse, and the video added another layer of credibility to Cassie's allegations, making it much harder for Diddy to simply dismiss her claims as part of a smear campaign or extortion attempt, as he had previously suggested. Diddy did it. He said he didn't do it, we saw him do it. The footage continued to circulate on social media and news outlets, outlets, leaving an indelible impact on public opinion and intensifying calls for accountability. As the legal proceedings moved forward, the footage would stand as one of the most damning pieces of evidence against Diddy in his career, complicating any efforts that he might try to rebuild his public image. But for Cassie, this exposure represented a vindication of her claims and a step towards reclaiming her narrative, empowering her and other survivors who face similar struggles. And soon, more explosive accusations would land on Diddy, further tearing down this facade that he had projected to the public for decades. In a shocking development that emerged just months after Cassie Ventura's explosive lawsuit, Rodney Lil Rod Jones Jr., a Chicago-based music producer, would file a federal lawsuit against Diddy. This lawsuit would accuse Diddy of running a criminal enterprise involving drugs, guns, and sexual exploitation of escalating the scrutiny on Diddy's lifestyle and alleged misconduct to scary new heights. According to USA Today, Lil Rod claimed that his professional relationship with Diddy quickly spiraled into a disturbing environment of coercion, manipulation, and abuse. Lil Rod's lawsuit paints a harrowing picture of his time working with Diddy on the Love album Off the Grid in 2022. What apparently begun as a standard music production gig allegedly devolved into a nightmare as Lil Rod accused Diddy of forcibly him, attempting and/or threatening to make further advances and using his power to coerce Lil Rod into acts that he did not consent to, also recording these encounters. The lawsuit claims that Diddy's threats of violence kept Lil Rod in constant fear, forcing him into compliance despite his discomfort. The lawsuit also extended accusations to Diddy's close associates, including his son Justin Dior Combs and Christina Karam, Diddy's chief of staff at Combs Global Enterprises. Lil Rod alleged that Justin and Christina actively participated in what he described as a venture where they solicited sex workers. This alleged criminal enterprise involved multiple members of Diddy's circle, each tasked with roles designed to serve Diddy's purported desires. According to Lil Rod, Stevie J, a Grammy Award-winning producer and longtime associate of Bad Boy Records, was also involved. The lawsuit claims that Diddy exploited Lil Rod's admiration for Stevie J to him, even sharing a video that allegedly showed Stevie J in an explicit act with another man. This manipulation, according to the lawsuit, was part of Diddy's coercive tactics to maintain control over Lil Rod. One particularly disturbing allegation in Lil Rod's lawsuit involved an encounter on Thanksgiving Day 2022 at Diddy's Miami residence. Lil Rod claimed that Diddy, while intoxicated, offered him cocaine which he declined before heading to the restroom. While in the restroom, a cousin of Young Miami, who is Diddy's ex-girlfriend, allegedly entered and began Lil Rod, performing without consent. Lil Rod reportedly pushed her away and left the restroom, but she pursued him into the open space, attempting to strangle him in front of Diddy and his staff. This incident, caught on video, underscored the atmosphere of forced encounters and coercion that Lil Rod described as pervasive throughout his time working with Diddy. Lil Rod's lawsuit also implicated other public figures, including actor Cuba Gooding Jr., who allegedly grieved him during a yacht party hosted by Diddy. Photos surfaced showing Diddy and Gooding together shortly before the alleged assault, further fueling speculation about the conduct at these high-profile gatherings, with another picture being presented in the lawsuit purporting to have been taken during the alleged assault. Beyond the assault allegations, Lil Rod also named industry executives as defendants in the lawsuit, such as Universal Music Group CEO Lucian Grange and Ethiopia Haptomeriam, the former CEO of Motown Records, which is the parent company of Diddy's Love Records. These accusations would suggest a broader network of complicity within the entertainment industry, bringing into question the accountability of executives who are indirectly connected with the alleged action. Lil Rod would claim that he lived at Diddy's home for nearly a year while working on the Love album, a period marked by continuous intimidation and manipulation. He would allege that he's often subjected to threats of violence if he refused to comply with Diddy's demands. In the lawsuit, Lil Rod states that he feared for his life after a violent altercation at the studio involving Diddy, his son Justin Combs, and an unidentified African-American male referred to as only G. This altercation would ultimately lead to G being shot. The lawsuit claims that Diddy then gave explicit instructions to tell the police that he had no involvement in the shooting, and pressured Lil Rod to lie to the authorities by stating that G had been shot in a drive-by while standing outside the studio. Afterwards, Lil Rod would reportedly become a target of both Stevie J and Love Records A&R DeForest Taylor, who, according to the lawsuit, sent him threatening messages after Lil Rod publicly requested that Diddy compensate him fairly for his work. This intimidation came in response to Lil Rod's decision to go public with his grievances, calling on Diddy to do the right thing and pay him. Moreover, in the lawsuit, Lil Rod claims that he was forced to watch as Diddy displayed his guns and bragged about getting away with shooting people. This actually led to Diddy apparently admitting that he was responsible for the shooting in the nightclub that got Shine 10 years in prison, as we covered earlier in this video. Diddy allegedly used these stories to further intimidate Lil Rod, reinforcing a sense of power that left him feeling trapped. The lawsuit went into extensive detail about the roles of other members of Diddy's circle in maintaining this alleged criminal enterprise. Stevie J, allegedly responsible for recruiting sex workers and participating in freak-offs. Justin Combs, allegedly soliciting while also participating in Diddy's gatherings. Brendan Paul, accused of serving as Diddy's mule and handling drugs and firearms. Frankie Santella allegedly assisted Brendan by carrying cash for gun and drug transactions. Moy Bourne allegedly hired workers and attended freak-offs with Diddy, Christina Coram, likened to the role of Ghislaine Maxwell in the operation, facilitating arrangements and acting as the central coordinator, Jose Cruz, Diddy's IT specialist, who allegedly recorded incriminating acts while maintaining a low digital profile to avoid detection. On October the 16th, 2024, two major record labels, Universal Music Group and Motown Records, would fight back against claims that they were complicit in funding Diddy's alleged drug-fueled trafficking operations. They would demand sanctions against New York attorney Tyrone T.A. Blackburn and his client Rodney Lil Rod Jones, who had sued Diddy earlier in February. Blackburn's lawsuit had also implicated UMG and Motown, accusing them of knowingly financing Diddy's illicit activities. According to Blackburn, the labels were aware that Diddy's lifestyle involved heavy drug use, misconduct, and illegal activities, and yet still supported him financially through a business partnership with his Love Records label in 2022. But the labels would fire back, calling the allegations meritless and saying that Blackburn was litigating the case in bad faith. They would argue that their connection to Diddy was purely contractual, with no involvement in his personal dealings, and would request sanctions to deter similar cases. Diddy's attorney, Erica Wolf, would also back the labels, accusing Blackburn of unprofessional conduct and exploiting the legal system to promote himself. In response, Blackburn would reveal that he had met with federal prosecutors 9 times regarding Diddy's criminal case, hinting that a superseding indictment could soon implicate more individuals tied to Diddy's alleged. But because the legal battle is still ongoing, US District Judge J. Paul Oaken would refrain from ruling on the motion for sanctions, while Diddy's defense team would seek to dismiss Lil Rod's complaint, labeling it an exaggerated attempt to turn a business dispute into a criminal conspiracy. Ultimately, on September the 17th, 2024, the music would stop, as Diddy was charged with and other offences a little while after a dramatic raid on his properties. After 34 years of pain inflicted on countless people, it seems that it's finally time for Diddy to face justice. While the accusations in this indictment are seemingly just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the alleged criminal activities of Diddy, it's good to see that this man, who believed that he was above the law for so long, finally getting his comeuppance. In the course of making this video, it only strengthened my beliefs that Diddy is one of, if not the most dangerous man to ever come from the hip-hop culture. There's been killers, gangsters, and abusers in hip-hop plenty of times, but for this man to build an empire of criminality, abusing the court system, and using his vast wealth to silence good people just doesn't sit right with me. I'm somebody with a strong sense of morals and an understanding of what's truly right and wrong, and from everything that I've learned about Diddy, it's my belief that this man is a genuine psychopath, who from decades of never being told no, always getting what he wants, and avoiding responsibility every time, thinks he can do whatever he wants. He's somebody who thinks he can do anything to you, and you should just sit there and take it, because he's the almighty Diddy. I personally think he's an absolutely abhorrent person. His image and legacy is completely tarnished, and he's likely to go down as hip-hop's Harvey Weinstein. After everything he's achieved, all the hit records, all the money he's made, all of the alcohol, cheap clothes, and other junk businesses that he's hocked, he will ultimately be remembered for being an abuser, a snake, a creep, and I honestly hope that he spends the rest of his life in prison. Because really, a world without Diddy on the streets is a safer and better world for everyone in it.